And we're back for the final video. This is 4 films I've seen recently that, as I said earlier, I don't think I actually could do videos on any of them. I don't know if there's enough on any of these films, but there's enough to talk about briefly. So why I'm talking about them. So they're all kind of recent releases, apart from one. So let's get to it. So it's Knock at the Cabin, Cocaine Bear, Badge 373, and Batman, which is the Doom that came to Gotham. So I'll do the modern ones first, and I'll do the Badge 373 at the end. That probably makes more sense. So, Knock at the Cabin is a new M. Night Shyamalan film. Shyamalan's a weird one. He's made films I really like. He's made films I really hated. But he has a weird director, so that means I always want to see what he does. Because it's like, you're never quite sure you're going to get. You could get another Happening, which is a wonderfully terrible film. You could get The Village, which is a wonderfully odd film. I liked an Unbreakable trilogy. Last Airbender is so terrible. It's kind of bizarrely enjoyable since it's such a bastardization of such a much better material. It's such a weird disaster that it's fascinating. And After Earth is one of the worst films I've ever seen in my life. So it's a wide range of good to bad. I mean, Sixth Sense as well. So, I mean, Signs is terrible. Lead the Watch terrible. So there's a whole bunch of them. He's like all over the place. Knocking at Cabin's not the best or the worst. It's got a good idea, but it's not delivered as well as it could be, is the best way I could put it. Basically, the idea is this gay couple and their daughter are at a cabin in the woods, like the movie, the Joss Whedon one. And up to this cabin, so there's 2 men and a little girl. Up to the cabin comes these 4 people, 2 men, 2 women. Obviously, knocking the cabin door. Knocking the cabin is the title. They take over the cabin and tie up the 2 men and leave the little girl untied, but she can't really escape. And they don't want to tap the little girl. And basically, they start talking, and they're sure the world's going to end if one of these people kills another one of them, and both submit to it. Submit to that's been the only way around it, the only way to survive. And basically, they have to try and convince these people that this is the only way to save the world. And there's going to be all these signs from God over the next day or two that's going to show them. Every time they say no, it's going to be another disaster. Now, are these people crazy? Or if they're crazy, they have to get out of that situation, get away from them? Or is it actually reality and these people are just trying to do their best to make the world survive? But you don't know until much later on what the answer is. Now, the good side is the idea is pretty good. I mean, the idea is pretty solid. Like, are these people who are tying up the villains? Or are you saying, no, I want to live? Are you meant to you the villain? That could be a really good idea. And they sometimes pull it off. There's some scenes there that work quite nicely. But the big problem it has is there's no sense of dread. This is a film should be dripping in dread. There should be a real sense of fear. And there's none of that. There's like, I can imagine Polanski doing something with this film and it would be funny as hell and scary and just weird and crazy and terrifying. Here, it's like watching a rehearsal because the actors, you get a feeling as they never really get ramped up in any of the parts. They're doing their best, but they still were kind of working in the parts before they started filming. It didn't feel like people had really got to the meat of the parts by the time they started filming. And you feel they weren't getting pushed by the director. Now, Dave Bautista's the lead, and Bautista can be scary in films. He was a wrestler, he was a heel, he knows how to put on the threat. He can also play very tender, and this character has to be scary and tender. Now, he gets the tender thing down really well. So Bautista's a good actor now. He learned how to act, and he now knows how to do it. But the threat's not there for some reason, even though it should be the easiest thing. And the 2 lead males are caricatures that define the fact that they're gay. See, you don't get that much more of the personalities beyond one has a religious bent and one is much more about reality and much more about what's real in front of them. And but they both feel that they come out of an 80s gay movie rather than a modern movie where you can go beyond the fact they're gay to actually make them characters. You don't get that in this film. It just feels that they're defined by the sexuality rather than the characters who happen to be gay. And you don't really get the characters first, the other stuff second. It's much more. This is advertisement for how a certain lifestyle, and it's really not, because ultimately it's about flawed characters. So rather than having more character base, it feels the director was very nervous about always portraying gays as very positive people rather than just being people. And it just kills the drama because it's like he's terrified of doing too much to them to make it scary, and it just becomes a problem. And the actors are fine, but again, you're feeling as they just kind of get started, the build up to the characters, and then we're filming. It didn't feel like they had time to really get into them, and there wasn't that much there for them. It was just like you're defined by this person, by their sexuality, you're defined by that. The other characters were better. The three others, people who are the threat, you get that's a very soap opera-ish though in a weird way. It's like every line is everything's explained when it should be hinted at, and have little moments that could go either way. There's way too much talk in this film. There's a big problem is you explain everything too much, and you don't have a chance to just let people just let the threat sit, and don't over-explain stuff and let your mind wander what it possibly could be. Instead, everyone talks all the time about what they're thinking, and it just kills the threat. So they all get their little speeches before they eventually exit the film, and the actors are good. It's just they don't have that. They're basically over-explain stuff, and that's the real problem with the film is the atmosphere is not there. There's not enough dark humor. It's scared of its own protagonist in a sense of it doesn't want to be called offensive. So it ultimately becomes like, I don't believe these characters as characters. I believe them as like stereotypes for our lifestyle, rather than I just want them to be people. You know, because most people wouldn't care either way if they're gay or not. It doesn't matter. Just make characters you like. And instead, it's just become these kind of the writer was definitely scared of being called homophobic in some way. So that film was just kind of there. It just was like should have been a lot better, but I've seen Shyamalan be a lot worse. The actor did their best, but a sense of they were asked to say too much and they weren't rehearsed enough. And they didn't find these little notes that kind of made it scarier. And you get this sense of this thing dragging on longer than it should each time. Each moment feels it's been on for too long. So you don't get that kind of more brutal sense of pacing that would make you think what's going to happen next. Instead, it just keeps going at a kind of steady speed, but it's not interesting though, just because it's just very vague and it's making really obvious points. So that's Knock on the Cabin. It's okay. Cocaine Bear is a lot more fun. Cocaine Bear is very flawed, but a lot of fun. It's pretty much a Roger Corman film from the 70s or 80s. One of those monster movies he made, where he had eccentric character actors come in and do kind of caricature parts, but have some fun, make some money, and then move on to the next gig. That's this film is. But instead of having like a humanoid from the deep, you have a bear high cocaine who's addicted to cocaine and is going to keep on moving. And you get lots of arms ripped off and characters are killed off left, right, and centre in fun ways. It's really enjoyable. But it's kind of like a Roger Corman movie from the 70s, which was not written by John Sayles. The John Sayles ones were better because it's a better line of character and a better line of progression of the story to keep it paced. This one, things happen here, things happen there, things happen there, and eventually they all come together slowly, but there's no sense of progression of each set of characters in a way that's very dramatic. But it does have some fun comedy actors doing their thing, doing a little bit of shtick, and every so often the bear attacks, and it's very enjoyable. That's the thing is, despite its flaws, it's still enjoyable. You get a lot of blood, people get their legs ripped off or faces ripped off. It's really gory in lots of ways. Children are threatened. Um, there's some funny jokes about cocaine. The bear is high as hell the whole time. It attacks our ambulance at one point. Some people get killed in brutal ways that are half sympathetic, half caricatures. There's nothing new here at all. But if you like this kind of movie of like a 70s kind of comedy horror movie where it's not going to be that scary, but it's going to be fun, this delivers. I mean, that's why it did so well. It's exactly this film you expect to get. I mean, it's kind of like Violent Night in the sense of the trailer was a lot of fun. I thought this one was much more fun than Violent Night. Violent Night, I thought, was basically a trailer that was extended, and the film itself was pretty bland, pretty uninspired. This one, it's exactly what you expect from the trailer. Bunch of character actors, bunch of funny things. That's it. That's all you need to get. There's nothing much more to it. It's fun. Alden Ehrenreich, who was Han Solo in the Solo movie, is in it, and he has a nice bit with O'Shea Jackson. They're both fun as two friends who are in this situation. Kerry Russell is a mother trying to find her daughter and dealing with her daughter's best pal, who's this little annoying kid. It's fun. There's lots of characters that are fun. There's a middle-aged romance between one of the park rangers and this wildlife expert who's trying to save the environment, and he dies a horrible, brutal death, which is fun because the character is quite annoying, and they know it, and they play up how annoying he is, and then they kill him brutally, which is very satisfying. And there's a running gag is how little people know about bears, actually. They all have theories of what they know about bears, but no one actually knows anything. And there's a running gag just how everyone gets everything wrong with bears, and they get the wrong information all times. And it's funny because you'd realize if you're in that situation, you would know just as little as they do, because no one really knows about bears beyond they can be scary sometimes. So yeah, that's a fun movie. Go watch it. You're gonna have a good time. If you like horror comedies, you'll probably have a good time. Next is Batman: The Doom That Came to Gotham, based on an old graphic novel by Mike Mignola did Hellboy. This one feels like it was kind of crunched down from something much longer. That's what happens a lot in some of these adaptations of graphic novels, which are more epic than the film can take. So you've got a certain running time. So you have to expand certain things, question other stuff, and if you get a good adapter, they know to take stuff out entirely, so you can get pace and you get story beats, and you can deliver there. In other cases like this one, it's like we just try and throw as much in as possible, and it goes really fast, and then you slow down from character scenes, then you go really fast with the action stuff again, and by the end of it, you're like, well, a lot of stuff happened, but none of it really paid off in any possible way that's really exciting. So it is one of the weakest ones I've seen. I am always a bit partial to these DC, animated movies. You probably see my channel is full of Batman animated series, Superman animated series. I like the DC ones; they're fun. They are the best ones, but it's not like they do great every time. Some of the ones that are adapted from graphic novels can leave something to be desired, you know. And this is definitely one of them because they needed a stronger writer. The writing was not good in this. The sense of build, rising and falling, a sense of purpose to the film is never there. It just ends up scenes put together, and you hand in this the script because these things happen. It goes from A to B. There's not a story there. There's not a story you can hang on to and feel like you actually got something from it. It just feels like it's a bunch of events, which a story should never feel like. But this one does. So even though I love the idea of a Batman dealing with a Lovecraftian monster and a tying in things like Poison Ivy and Two-Face to this, It's set in the 1920s, but it harks back to Victorian times in the design. You have the penguin mutating into a penguin-like creature, crafting penguin creature. There are lots of interesting things going on, and it's not in continuity, so they can do what they want. But it means there's just nothing really delivers. It's just a bunch of stuff that's kind of fun, and you get some fun reinvention of characters. But nothing really is that strong. It's just like it's something that happened. You watch the film, it happened. That's all I've got to say about that one. It's like if you only watch one DC animated film this year, don't make sure it's not this one. You'll be disappointed. Right. And the final thing is Bad C73. This I watched last night. It's a Vindicator. Stars Robert Duvall, Vanna Bloom, and it is one of those films that are done after French Connection and Dirty Harry. They were massive hits. Of course, they had a lot of these films like Freebie and the Bean and the East Coast, and the West Coast, I mean. On the East Coast, you had 7 Ups and a bunch of other road cop movies, and French Connection 2 set in Paris. So French Connection was a big hit. They tried to replicate that, and nothing really worked. This one actually takes bits of Dirty Harry and bits of French Connection. So you've Eddie Egan, who was the basis of Popeye Doyle. He's a supporting actor in this one. You've got a lot of like New York grime, but this one's far worse than 7 Up. 7 Up is a far better film than this. This one's annoying a lot of the time, because half the time it feels like a detective film from the 60s. And then it feels like a script it was from the 60s. And then they're throwing in a bunch of other stuff to it to make it more like Dirty Harry and French Connection. So he's much more of the cop's much more of a rebel. He's been suspended early in the film, and so he's doing all this stuff as a vigilante basically. And for some reason he's never arrested, which is weird. And he's trying to find the guy who killed his cop partner. So it's a very much a by the numbers plot idea. And then by the time you get to the end, you find out who did it. Who did it's very obvious, right? You can tell who did it within the first 5 minutes. Before the guy's even killed, you know who did it. So there's no suspense there. There's no real build on the mystery. They have like 5 minutes of mystery when he goes to investigate something, and then when you find out the information, you pretty much know what's going on. It's like it's impossible not to know what's going on after the first half hour. And it takes the detective all this time to figure the rest out. And most of all, the detective, played by Robert Duvall, is the most annoying character ever. But Robert Duvall can do a lot with characters. They cannot invent a whole character out of cliches and try and make it human. This guy is a scumbag. This guy's horrible. He behaves horribly to people. He's a love story of Verna Bloom, where you wonder why she doesn't just punch him in the nuts early on and leave him. He's just so horrible to her. He's not particularly bright. And Duvall was floundering the whole way through. This was done around a bit just after The Godfather came out, so it was a starring role. So he probably thought, oh, good, a starring role. This will get me up a bit more, but it's not a good part for him. It's like, and there's so much trying to make him like Dirty Harry and Popeye Doyle in the sense of he's a New York cop who doesn't play by the rules. So that's Popeye Doyle, but he's also he will beat the crap out of people and screw the rules just like Dirty Harry. And it's like, he hates his bosses hate him in a very kind of weird way. Like he's saying they're because I'm investigating them for this or that, for things that they would investigate you for. It's always that paranoia thing, and it's like, what's his problem? It's like, you'd be investigated for this, you'd know that straight away as a cop. You just have to go do something for a while and keep out of trouble. And he just keeps on running into trouble. There's a big bus scene they're trying to make it like the French Connection. It's like, okay, he'd be in jail after that. He's not even touched. He just goes on holiday after that. Out of town to heal up from the fight and then come back and kill more people. It's just a terrible character. And the action scene is the most uninvolving action I've seen in years. It's this big bus flying around, just doing things, moving very slowly. I try to make it the bus, don't let the bus do anything it couldn't do naturally. But they don't have any interest in the bus to do apart from just go left and right and smash cars. And it's like, well, there's nothing here to do. You're chased by these Puerto Ricans, and the cop's really racist, by the way. I'll try and make it out so that it's like, yeah, we know he's racist, and you should know he's racist too. But it's like, he's unnaturally racist for no reason beyond, oh, we're being realistic, but it makes the character just be horrible. I mean, they make a point in French Connection that Popeye actually hates everybody. He's not really racist, he's just offensive to everybody. And this one, the guy's just racist. And which point is realistic at the time, but there's a way to write it that's interesting. There's a way to write it that's not interesting. That's willing to the not interesting thing. The villains are Puerto Ricans, and you can tell that this was made by liberals because they do try and give them some more depth. The funny thing is, you like the villains way more than you like the hero. I was actually rooting for the villains in this film. That's how much more interesting they were. Like, they had a whole point of talking about how the Puerto Ricans were pulled over from America to do terrible jobs that demeaned them, and now they've just been left to rot. And then these guys are like activists, and they're actually going to go try and take guns back to Puerto Rico to try and do a revolution to try and save the Puerto Ricans from oppression. You're like, I'm way more on their side than I am on the cop side. And there's a villain track called Sweet Willie, which is a great name. And you're like, he makes more sense. He's the most intelligent person there. It's like, yeah, I'm a businessman. It's crime. Yeah. It's like, if you're a dreamer, you're going to die horribly because this world's cruel and nasty. And it's like, he makes more sense than the cop ever does. Even though he's a scumbag, it's like, well, yeah, he's got a philosophy, he knows what he's doing. And the young guy, he's telling the young guy, like, you're an idealist, that's good, but you play good. But one thing I've noticed about idealists is as soon as they get some power, they get instantly corrupted. So he's just telling everybody the truth and annoying them. And it's like, this is great. And everybody, when the young guy's talking to his speeches, is like, he makes sense as well. And it's like, the only person who never makes any sense in this film is the cop, because the cop's a moron. And it's like, it's like this film would be much better off if actually the cop fail and the guys away with it. Because A, you like them better than him, and B, it would be really subversive and prove the point of this guy's a scumbag. It's just a weird film. I've never seen a film with a protagonist so unlikable, where you get the sense that, the people maybe don't realize just how unlikable he is. He just is the worst character. He's just horrible the whole way through. And again, it's just like every time it's about our character, it's like there's so much more interesting in this guy. And this guy's played by Robert Duvall, and even he can't make this guy interesting. Normally he can steal scenes from anybody. And this film is worth watching just to see everyone else steal scenes from Robert Duvall. That doesn't happen usually in films, but it happens here. Because everyone outacts him because they've all the dialogue and he did nothing. So it just shows that even he cannot make genius choices with nothing. So it's a film that where everyone deserves better. It's enjoyable and I like those 70s cop movies, but I've seen much better. I mean, if you can't watch French Connection, watch 7-Ups, and watch Dirty Harry, watch Phoebe and the Bean, which is really offensive but funny. There's so many fun cop movies. This is not one of them. This is the stinker of the bunch. This did not do well. You can see why, because it was not good. It was just really a mess. It was made by committee. Like people said, make this film for us. And you sense the directors try to put stuff in to try and make it work a bit better, but there's only so much you can do with a premise that's so flawed, a character that's so flawed. So, yeah, I mean, unless you're a masochist, avoid this one because it's painful. I mean, unless you really want to see the villains steal scenes from Robert Duvall. You know. So I hope you enjoyed this. This is the end of my videos for now. Hopefully you've heard about stuff you might watch, and hopefully I'll see you all some other time. Right, bye for now.